analysis methods to evaluate different kind of supply chain finance projects assessment reports. But in my NSFC application, I use text mining methods to do data mining on different kinds of CSI reports. Why I want to discuss this paper, because I think the window area is a very typical small and medium enterprises focused area. And in China, you can see by end of 2040, there are 40 million small and medium enterprises, and they contribute 60% of overall GDP and 50% of national industry and commercial tax. And they also contribute a lot to our urban employment. So the government and the local government, central government and the local government put a lot of efforts in protecting and help to improving the small and medium enterprises. And this problem should be very important, especially for some cities such as Wenzhou. And from the practical experience we found for these small and medium companies, the most difficult thing for them is to get money from the bank, because banks want to get money for these large and more stable companies. But for these small and medium ones, they may be very young, they don't have a lot of cash flow, they maybe have higher risks. So how to help them? Supply chain finance can be a very useful, helpful tool to help them to solve this problem. So this technique is very important for not only for the small and medium enterprises itself, but also very useful for the banks as well as for the governments. Supply chain finance, according to the literature, it's an innovative process which can optimize the financial structure and the cash flow for both the supply and buy sides. It's not a very new concept. I think it's from 1990s there's some research in this field, but most of them are modeling or simulation papers, because we don't have enough empirical research on this field. We don't have enough existing true projects. But nowadays, we can find there are more and more supply chain finance projects existing in China and in Europe. But if you go to US, you will find there are still not so many. So there are some benefits from supply chain finance. It can reduce cost of capital. It can help us to reduce duration of cash flow. According to Barry 2002, small business finance, they always have 4 techniques: financing statement lending, asset-based lending, credit scoring, as well as relationship lending. However, we found that the particularity of supply chain finance strategy in small and medium financing has received less attention from literature. Actually, if you try to find the impact research, like survey, interviews, and secondary data analysis, there are not many in this field, because there are some challenges for supply chain finance projects. It's not easy to conduct. For example, lack of common vision among the supply chain partners, lack of automation in payment processes, and lack of knowledge and training on supply chain finance tools. In this research project, we try to list some primary research objectives we want to achieve. First of all, we want to identify the key factors used in evaluating and approving supply chain finance laws through computer-aided text mining and expert opinions. Then we try to develop and validate measurement for these factors. Following that, we try to examine the environment and assessment strategies of supply chain finance service providers, such as banks, such as some finance service companies, through class analysis. Then we try to investigate the relationship between the different strategies of SME clients. Finally, we try to investigate impacts. For this research, to be honest, we got very excellent research thinking. We contacted a bank, and this bank gave us some data. And all these data are regulated by China Banking Regulatory Commission, and these data are stored in an independent database as electronic textual data. So it can enable us to do against money. And all these data allow us to get into some critical approval outcomes. For example, interest rates and default event. Moreover, all these data are for 10 years. So it's not cross-sectional data. Then it's easy for us to do this research. And from the bank, we also can use how they do the assessment and approval procedures in the system. They have 4 stakeholders in this assessment and approval procedures for supply chain finance projects, namely credit applicant, loan manager, business unit management, and the approval officer. And there are 3 phases: survey phase, assessment phase, and the final approval phase. And all these data are stored in an electronic database, so we can easily to get access to this data. We use credit rational theory to guide our research. According to the credit rational theory, there are 2 risks the banks need to deal with. First of all is advanced selection. Secondly is moral hazard. Advanced selection is that borrowers who are willing to borrow at higher interest rates are with worse risks, as they see lower probability of repaying the loan at maturity. It's not difficult to understand that. And secondly is the moral hazard. Borrowers with high interest rates are induced to divert the fund to an alternate project with lower probabilities of success. I think it's quite typical at eventual, right? Some clients want to borrow money from financial service companies or from banks. They say they will use this money to do some low risk projects, but at last they try to divert this money to do some, for example, real estate investment or even P2B things, and the bank can get the money back. So the bank needs to do some things to help them to detect these kind of risks. First of all, they need to identify the good customers from bad ones, or we can call it a risk assessment in the academic area. Second one is control borrowers' opportunity of behavior, or we call it monitoring. These are the information impactful knowledge we can get. For example, financial information, credit score, relationship-based information, supply chain information, information integration, fixed assets, and working capital. Then the third part is the most interesting and important part for company research. We use the compute-aided support content analysis to deal with these large volumes of texture data. As I said before, since we have very excellent data that has holding a similar paradigm in report writing, and all these reporting are based on the same theoretical elements listed by the Chinese banking system. So this reporting can easy to conduct a dictionary. Then we try to follow the Bayesian and the Shi's dictionary customization procedures, but we did different things because at that time AI is not so popular, and they use all the human coding to do these things. But nowadays, as the computer science is quite advanced, we can try to use compute to help us to do this coding process and to build the dictionary. Then, first of all, we try to prepare a list of objects related to supply chain finance strategy. We call it data compilation. Then we try to examine and decide the units of text. For example, we got 4,040 complete evaluated assessment reports. Then we try to develop sense of words and relevant expression from text. Then we try to organize an expert panel discussion and try to help us to label different clusters. And it can run many times because you needed all these experts get almost the same conclusion on the labels. Then you can connect it into the second step. So it's kind of default method. Then we can get the sample text and continue test the expression of words. Finally, we got 35 sample word groups of 8,002 words. In this paper, we try to use machine learning techniques and help us to do this unit classification. Then it can help us to group all these words from these 4,040 reports. We also list all these elements of supply chain finance works from these reports. All these reports have these three types. For example, stakeholders, such as manufacturing company, commercial company, logistics service providers, financial institutional and investors. We call it macro institutional level stakeholders. Secondly, are some micro institutional levels such as different departments, purchasing, production, distribution, and logistics units. Thirdly, are some individual levels such as entrepreneur and employees. They have the second part of knowledge is the financial information, ability and appearance of small business owners, other perceived information. Then I can show you our final dictionary and relative context. As I said before, this data from a Chinese bank, so most of these words are in Chinese. So the most difficult part for our research is that you need to do a Chinese dictionary. We can see that for the financial information, they have very comprehensive information for every companies, and also you can see all these parts. They list for the supply chain circumstance, supply chain condition, supply chain law, logistic description, because it's not a traditional law contract, it's supply chain finance projects. So you can see there are more supply chain related information listed here.
Okay, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
You could go back. I understand the difficulty of matching the English label with the Chinese context. I can see some of those are pretty easy, like for instance, logistic description. There's a keyword I can see right away. What about, for instance, supply chain condition? The supply chain circumstances. What would be the category 3, the first one, supply chain circumstances?
What we do is that we try to use machine learning techniques to list supply chain circumstances, 供应链环境, and we try to go to Zihai, and also different kind of wiki, as well as some published Chinese journals to find related descriptions.
Yes, because I don't see any circumstances in the the Chinese
it's
part.
a description of this supply chain condition. It's not necessary to have these words.
Keywords. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's more like a.
Yeah. This is why we need to use machine learning to do that. Because if we use human coding, it will be a lot of mistakes.
Yeah. And of course, it's a calibration that back and forth takes a lot of time.
Yes. And we need more than 12 experts from different supply chain finance areas to help us to, how to say, like translate and translate it back to do this dictionary to check if the computer did the right thing.
Sure. Is this dictionary made by you or is it from literature?
It's from literature. It's by our team, but we have a reference from literature.
So you collect that from the literature. It's not like a standardized dictionary. It's your own. It's from literature, but you collected that from
different sites. Yeah, literature. Yeah.
But the difficult part is really the calibration, proper calibration.
This is the most important and most difficult part.
Yes.
If it's English, it will be much easier because you have, like American, you have some industrial how to say, dictionary for different words. You can just use these words to do the dictionary and to do the text mining. But if in Chinese, it will be much more difficult.
Another question. A friend of mine working at a bank in this process, not in China, of course, when a report comes from a previous evaluation department, they say that there are some keywords on the report. When they see these keywords, the evaluation process turns to green or red, depending on which keywords is written by the previous department. Is there any story going on here? Maybe you consider also that aspect?
Yeah, pardon, what do you mean by green or red?
So, you showed us in one of your previous pages, there are different stages of this evaluation. At each stage, a different person collects the data and puts this data into the report.
Okay.
So, is there any keyword at some of these early stage evaluations that put into the report, and the final, the decision maker, when they see this keyword, they make the decision based on this keyword? This is different from the dictionary, though.
Yeah, this is you mean the reliability of the report itself.
Right.
Yeah, I think because as I mentioned before, I can show you. All these as I stated, the credit staffs are holding in similar paradigms in reporting and writing. We also have the industrial PhD who involved in this projects, and all these staffs need to follow the same, because we collect the data from one bank. So all these staffs have the same training, and they have the need to obey the Chinese banking system's law to do these things. We need to, for the research perspective, we need to believe these reports are actually right. Because it's all finished projects, not ongoing ones. And also, I will mention it in my limitations. There are some research or data limitations in this research, as I will mention it afterwards. This is why I didn't publish this paper yet. It's still a working paper. I want to do a mixed methods to show if the translation of this data would be more reliable or something like that. To do more interview or to do a case study in another bank. Because as I will mention in the foreign discussion, we got all this data from one specific bank. It become a problem. And all these projects are approved ones. We didn't got the rejected ones. It become another problem.
Let me ask you a different question. Because nowadays the Google translation is getting pretty good, especially from Chinese to English, not the way around. Have you tried using the Google translation automatically convert the text into English, but you could then using the English approach to just match them directly? Did you try that approach instead?
No, maybe it's a good idea. We can try it in the foreign projects. But we try to use this, as I will mention in my methodology implications. This TD-IDF model actually is used by Google. We just borrow it.
Yes. Again, the reason I mention that is because of the computer-aided text recognition. Some of the foreign softwares are quite good. The English part of it are quite good.
Yes.
So that's.
So it's difficult to use Chinese in public.
Yes. Yes.
It's very difficult for the reviews to recognize that. We need some time to do that. But for the IGOPM paper, it's quite lucky that at the first submission we got desk reduction because we use the same method to do the text money to the Alibaba's funded small and medium enterprises, and they gave a lot of negative comments on these methods. However, on the second round, when we tried to list all the dictionary and these things, all these reviews accepted this method. So I think it can be, how to say, every course has two sides. The good side is that all our data are unique. Because we are in China, we can get this Chinese data. Other people, maybe they can't get it. So if we can take some money to do the Chinese data mining, maybe it can help you to publish. But the difficult part is how to get these reviews and editors to rely on your research. Then it will become a difficult part.
That's why I was asking about translating to English first, and then it become much.
And the foreign part is not difficult to understand. We try to use equation. It's not a complicated one. We try to use the like the frequency of a word in a document and the number of document contain words. Then use the weights to do the calculates. You can see we can find the key themes in all the supply chain finance projects are the financial information, supply chain condition, as well as payment policy. All the measurements are 100%. We also did the factor analysis. We found 4 important factors involving namely comprehensive capability assessment, cash flow monitoring, or financial analysis, supply chain collaboration, as well as assessed monitoring. So, in the current project, they help us to answer what and how questions. And it's an ongoing project, so there's still a lot of work we can do. But on the first stage, we find some solution to the banks and for the financial service providers. We imported 2 supply chain finance specific risk management factors, cash flow controlling and supply chain collaboration. They can perform in parallel with the other 3 supply chain SME risk management factors. And this study helped us confirm that the risk management factors in supply chain finance projects, but also quantitatively measure their implementations in best practices. The study developed more impactful insights. As I mentioned before, in OM field, most of our research are mathematical modeling based. There lack of impact research to support this kind of supply chain finance projects. But it's quite necessary for the government and for the banks and the financial service providers. So our research are very important, not only for the academic area, but also for the practitioner perspective. Also, we found the E&A strategies which are more cash flow and collaboration oriented are inclined to support more weak firms than the other E&A strategies. We define weak here as younger firms. And so, as we discussed before, we use the sugar-based CATA method with two broad-text mining techniques, skip, run model, and overlap TD-IDF model in our research to help us to deal with large volume of texts, but it has some limitation itself. The raw data only set on applications who have already get approval from bank. So we don't know why the bank reject some projects. If we can get this reject applicants, they make a comparison that will be more interesting and more helpful. And another limitation is that all this data from one specific bank. It's quite difficult for us to get the bank to get this data from other banks or other financial service providers, because they protect this data very secretly. And their lack of secure data to support this kind of research. So if you have some data source, we can just do some collaborations. So that's all. Thank you.